Prime Minister Boris Johnson suffered multiple setbacks on his Brexit plans this week after outrage over his decision to suspend Parliament. British lawmakers will reconvene on October 14th ahead of Brexit's October 31st scheduled date.
In Monday's session, talks between Parliament and the Prime Minister came to a head as lawmakers delivered three major blows to the Prime Minister's plans. They rejected his call for an early election, and they passed a law to block a no-deal exit from the EU. Mark Phillips reports.
They call this place the Mother of Parliaments. Well, Mother was having one of those days. Parliament was being prorogued, they call it, suspended for 5 weeks. And a lot of Mother's children, the MPs, weren't happy. The government says it's sending Parliament away so a new legislative program can be prepared. But everybody knows the suspension is so hardline Brexiter Boris Johnson can get them out of the way.
This government will not delay Brexit any further.
Except that by law now he is compelled to ask for a delay if he can't get a new deal to leave the EU. And there's no sign of a new deal. Johnson says he'll die in a ditch first, so the name-calling continued.
This government is a disgrace, and the way the Prime Minister operates is a disgrace.
All this theater can be traced back to this man, Johnson advisor Dominic Cummings, a kind of gray eminence Steve Bannon-type figure who rarely comes out of the shadows.
You guys should get out of London. Go and talk to people who are not rich Remainers.
So Parliament rose, singing, not happy songs.
And Mark Phillips joins us now from London. Mark, so Prime Minister Boris Johnson says Britain's departure from the EU has got to happen by the end of October with or without a deal. Just explain to our audience here in the United States, what would a no-deal Brexit mean for Britain?
Well, for the critics of no-deal Brexit, the so-called cliff-edge Brexit, which means leaving the EU without any arrangements being made as to how trade continues between these two huge trading partners, going into the future, it would mean a lot of serious things: food shortages, medicinal shortages, tie-ups at the borders in import and export, and tie-ups at the borders as well for the movement of people back and forth. And perhaps most importantly, and this is a big sticking point, unresolved issues along what they call the intra-Irish border. In other words, between the north of Ireland, which is part of the UK, and the Irish Republic in the south, because Ireland remains part of the EU when you'd now have to say perhaps if the UK comes out of it, and arrangements have not been made as to how trade and people, which flow completely openly now over that border, would happen in the future. And so we're stuck in a series of contradictions. No agreement at all on how the UK comes out of the EU, and no agreement now as to when. Boris Johnson has, under this legislation that he's lost control of, that's been passed over the past week, he has until the 19th of this month, of October, to come up with a new deal. He says he's got a bunch of proposals. The various EU leaders, France, Germany, and many others say they haven't seen him come up with a single constructive, positive proposal in this period where that deal is supposed to be negotiated.
Mark, you brought up one of the stickier issues, which is the border between Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland. And, here it's called a backstop. And I think here people don't really understand sort of the long-term consequences. But without hammering out a good agreement, it means that if the UK leaves the EU, they still are going to be embroiled in a legal relationship with them because of this border.
Well, that's the objection of the what they call the Unionists, the very strong, usually Protestant movement within the north of Ireland that wants very much, whose whole purpose, political purpose, is to stay within the UK. And they say any special arrangement that involves keeping industrial arrangements, farm standards, meat and produce standards, and anything else that is required to facilitate the trade between North and Southern Ireland, anything that puts Ireland, Northern Ireland, under a special arrangement, special status, which is what the backstop is, so it can continue to trade with the South, and it's effectively one economy there, that then distinguishes Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, and that they will not stand for.
So that's really interesting to me, Mark, because I have to go back and look at my history, but I believe under the Good Friday Agreement that if the majority of the folks in Northern Ireland decide at some point that they would like to be a part of the Republic of Ireland, I don't recall if there was some amendment to that, but this could potentially mean that you could see a unified Ireland over Brexit ultimately.
The difficulty is even more fundamental than that. There was almost no discussion within the time when the whole referendum, the Leave the EU idea, was being debated here before the referendum in the UK, of the effect that would have on the Good Friday Agreement, which is, you say, is the peace deal between North and South, in which the IRA put down its guns and the Protestant paramilitaries put down their guns, and both the UK government and the Irish government are the guarantee of those deals. And there are all kinds of fudges within that deal. But the effect of it all is that there is an inherent contradiction between Brexit and the Good Friday Agreement. They cannot both exist in the way that they have been defined and promoted until now at the same time, and that's the conflict that has created this difficulty.
Really
Just
fascinating.
one of a few conflicts.
Exactly.
Mark, thank you so much.
Pleasure.